Oh.
I've been hustling to make up for lost time, like a lunatic.
Yeah, what road was that on? Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Sometimes it is. But it didn't.
So, are you going to zoom in or no?
It's that time of year.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let them know. I don't know what that means because I know Lisa gets concerned about the quorum. Okay. Fair enough. I'll let them know. All right. Yeah, good luck.
That part. That guy just passed away. Right? The guy with the dance with that 2-0, Michael. Addison just passed away. Oh, yeah. Yeah, my wife's still
Oh, I mean,
He's not going to make it, but I guess we'll still have an exit. So how are you? Doing fine. Putting up with this on again, off again, wet. I was off for a couple of weeks. We had a wedding in California, so we're out there. Oh, wow. Dry.
so would you think you have a phone?
Oh, yeah, she's gonna zoom in. Florida,
Okay.
Margaret.
Oh, Margaret. Okay. So,
I have to announce
just really police people about their voices being high, because that is,
Yeah.
can we do something about that? Because we're not gonna be able to hear each other. Oh, good. And if anybody gets ready to pass out, just flag them.
Yeah, that won't take long, I guess.
Hi,
Margaret, are you there?
I'm here.
Good. Okay, good. We have a quorum. Yeah. Yeah. What's her name? Lena. Yeah, take it home. He said he hit it pretty good. It was all bloody when it was able to crawl to the guardrail. It's like back, it's just dragging his hind legs. Flying itself over the guardrail and went down a bank. When the state police came, they was like, I'm trying to go down there. It's like, euthanize it? Not our problem. Yep. So I guess they reported to someone else. Oh, yeah. You know that long entrance ramp to 84 coming east? that kind of goes by Tilton.
Oh, yeah, yep.
That's what he was
Oh,
on.
really?
It's just getting on 84 and barricade. You can see it. It's a busy spot right there. Yeah, with the two ridge lines.
Right, right. Oh, we're going to Farmington, up to Mountain Road and everything like this. Big old black bear walk right across right in front of us.
Yeah.
Are you ready, Lane?
It's recording.
Okay. Well, we're waiting for Jennifer. I want Jennifer. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 8th, meeting of the Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission. First, I got to introduce Margaret, who is an alternate. She'll be sitting in for us tonight, so we have a quorum.
And she's zooming in.
And she's zooming in. So, is there any? We don't have to do all these decisions right now. So, guys, anybody go over the minutes? Any corrections, additions, deletions, anything? Bill, Margaret, anything?
No.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the May
6th meeting.
6th minutes, the May 6th meeting.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Thank you, Margaret. First up on the agenda is a public hearing for application 25-04W, proposal by Shuttle Meadow Development to construct 3-lot subdivision and associated improvements within a regulated area on lot 6A, block 12F at 398 Chamberlain Highway. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing for application 25-04W.
Can I have a second? All in favor?
Yeah.
Up for the applicant.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Evan Seaman. I'm a lawyer at Robinson and Cole on behalf of the applicant, this evening, Shuttle Meadow Development. This is an application for a regulated activity related to a 3-lot residential subdivision. The property is at 398 Chamberlain Highway. We appeared before you on May 6th to open the public hearing, and I'm not going to go through all the details during that hearing, but just to provide some summary on that application. But actually, before I do that, I'd like to introduce the team. This is a property at 398 Chamberlain Highway. 2.15 acres. It's developed along the building that was previously used as a garden or nursery, operated for some time. There were additional nurseries on the property at some time. Towards the rear of the property, which is actually the western border, is a water course. This application proposes to divide that 2.15 acre parcel into 3 lots. And the reason this application is before you is because by statute, any proposed subdivision that any property that sought to be subdivided, which contains inland wetlands or water courses, has to appear before you for a permit to conduct regulated activities. So the rear parcel is just over an acre in size. The 2 other parcels in front of it are about a half acre in size. The existing commercial building is going to be utilized as a single-family residence. The other 2 lots are also proposed to have single-family residences on them. So that's one aspect of this application. The other aspect of this application, which got much discussion at the May 6th hearing, is a plan to restore the site, to restore the inland wetlands and their functions and values. There was some discussion at the previous hearing in May about possible fill activity that occurred at some point in time. So as part of this application, the applicant is providing a proposed restoration plan That plan was discussed at the May 6th meeting. That meeting was continued, however, because we received comments from the town's peer review consultant, Land Tech, just a few hours before that meeting, so we weren't able to revise the materials prior to that meeting. We did incorporate Mr. Zemba's comments and suggestions as part of our next round of revisions, which were submitted May 23rd to Land Tech for review. We received additional comments and suggestions just a day before your meeting, which was scheduled for June 3rd, and we didn't have adequate time to respond and revise materials prior to that June 3rd meeting, so we requested that it be continued, and we granted that continuance to allow us time to do that. So with that background in mind, I'd like to briefly ask Mr. Gilmartin. And one other thing I should mention. There were, according to Land Tech's analysis and review based on the test bits that occurred on the property, there were allegedly 2 fill events that occurred at some point in time. However, it's not, Land Tech and Mr. Cole, our wetland scientists, were unable to determine when that actually occurred, when those fill activities occurred. So while it does appear that there were fill activities at some point in the past, we don't know when they happened. The applicant inherited the conditions of the property and is trying to do the right thing here, and that's why this restoration plan is part of this application. So with that background in mind, I'd like to ask Mr. Gilmartin to briefly go over the proposed 3-lot residential subdivision, and then have Mr. Cole come and briefly describe what impacts, if any, and I don't think there are any impacts related just to the 3-lot proposed residential subdivision. And once we get through that, we'll go over the revised restoration plan. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jack Gilmartin. I'm with JL Surveying. I'm one of the partners at the company, and I'm here to talk about what I've more recently gone out and done in the field. I haven't been at the other meetings recently, so I didn't know everything that went on. So I was asked to go out and do some extra field work to get involved with the restoration application. So what we have is, as we was explaining, we've got 3 lots. We have an existing building on here with a garage on the end over here, and we're going to put in 2 new houses. I mean, we've gone over this a lot, so I won't dwell on it too much, but we have to take the garage off the building to make it meet the zoning setback lines. That would be required for each one of these lots. It will be sewered by city sewer. There's a sewer line going through the property, and there's water on Chamberlain Highway, so there'll be water and sewer provided. There's 2 wells that are already on with this building. We'll probably be abandoning those wells eventually, but there was one on over by the garage over here, and then there's a second one on the side of the building. There was a Quonset hut, so there's concrete still on the ground from a Quonset hut or for the nursery that was in there. And what was I asked to do? What I was asked to do is take elevations along the brook, go beyond the brook, take it around the brook side, and see where the grading would be, and what we could do for the restoration. So I was told that we would want to stay at least 5 to 8, sometimes 10 feet away from, depending on the curve of the brook, away from the existing brook. And what we would do is take out material. The suggestion was to go down about a foot to the brook side, and then go down 3 feet go a strip of 30 feet wide. So we're going to be about 5 to 8 feet away from the existing brook, cut a foot, go 30 feet, dig down 3 feet, so there's going to be a backward grade, and then take this material out and bring in suitable material that our soil scientists will explain to you what we put in there. What that material would be this hatched area along here. This is where we'd be taking that material out. It's just over 1,000 yards that we'd be taking out. It would be stored here temporarily on this concrete, which we're not gonna be taking it off the site, probably, because if you're really familiar with it, this is all pavement out here. We're gonna be taking all that pavement and gravel, we'll be putting that material out here to build a lawn for this farmhouse. So that's basically what we're trying to do for the restoration. I don't know if you have any questions.
What are you trying to accomplish by doing this?
I think, if I could just interject, Mr. Cole's going to describe that right now. So, and if you could first describe.
Hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
Did you have a question for?
What is the nature of the material?
I don't know.
For the record, my name is Ian Cole, professional soil scientist based out of Middletown, Connecticut. I'm the soil scientist of record for this application. I know we've had a lot of discussion about this property throughout the last year here. First, I'm going to talk about, the impacts of the proposed subdivision. No direct wetland impacts associated with the subdivision. And secondary impacts are limited to some minor grading that encroaches within the 50-foot upland review area, and it's very minor. The closest structure is 70 feet from the wetland boundary, and this area is very flat. So, there's no direct wetlands disturbance, and secondary effects are very minimal, especially since, all of these sites are serviced by, municipal sewers. So no on-site services with regards to septic systems. Dovetailing into what Jack had just talked about with the restoration plan, essentially following the guidance of the town's environmental consultant, the project's proposing a 25-foot wide self-sustaining vegetated buffer that will preserve the functions and values of the wetland. To do this, essentially, there's a brook that runs along and parallel with the wetland boundary. And so, as Jack was discussing, there's going to be basically about a 5-foot berm that's left there, so you keep the stream bank integrity there. The additional benefit of that is most of the trees that are still on site are kind of in that berm. And then what the project's going to propose is a line of, they're going to come in with 20, 3-inch caliber, 6-foot tall trees, install those along the shoreline, that's closest to the wetland boundary to provide some of that shading back into the area. And then that will transition into a shrub zone. That's about 100 shrubs that will be kind of clumped together. That will take up the bulk of that next 15-foot shrub zone. And then that's going to transition down into an ecotone. So you have this nice transition into like a wet meadow kind of detention basin mix, seed mix. To prevent any future encroachments into that area, there's going to be a strong landscaping boulders will be placed along the 50-foot boundary, in addition to signage. That's going to be, this will be signage, boulders, then it's going to go to this tall wet meadow, and that's going to transition to a shrub zone that's 15 feet wide, and that's going to transition into these 20 new trees that were planted along. And so that ecotone there will preserve and buffer any of the proposed development to the wetland resources. In terms of, I think there's a pointed question of what is this material? Fill material. Land Tech, myself, and town staff witnessed several test pits on the site. Generally speaking, right, there was 2 to 4 feet of fill over naturally occurring soils, and it was a mixture of compacted, fill from the area. And as Jack said, just the material that will be excavated to help create the wetland, the creation wetland. Essentially, the benefit here of this wetland is that there's a wetland right next door to match the grades with, right? So you have that, naturally occurring wetland as your reference wetland close by. This material that's excavated, it's not going to leave the site. It's going to be stockpiled and potentially beneficially reused, because most of these foundations will probably have to be raised up a little bit. They're not going to go down to the ground. And so that fill would be reused beneficially for use on site for the houses, if it's suitable.
So the naturally occurring soils, I think those were your words, under the fill material?
Yep.
Are they wetland soils?
They could be wetland soils. It's very silty material that is, has a lot of modeling, and there's a high seasonal water table there. So, but they're not wetland soils any longer. The definition of a wetland basically gets 86. If you have more than 2 feet of fill on top of naturally occurring soils, it's no longer a wetland. And it's impossible to determine when that fill was. I mean, that fill could predate 1976. It could be grandfathered in. There's no way to determine it. based off of air
If I could
photos.
just interject for a second, I know that Land Tech did an initial study on the parcel, and I'm sure the commission remembers, dating back to around 2015-16, looking at aerial photography. And a good portion of that western area was fully vegetated with large mature trees. And then as we went several years farther into the future, you could see where clearing took place. So it's not something that took place 20 years ago.
Well,
It's
I
evident
would
just
suggest
from the
that
photos.
clearing is not being argumentative here at all. I'm just suggesting that land clearing doesn't necessarily coincide with significant fill activities either. And I know if we've been out there on site, there still are large stumps within that zone. You know, to me, we even seen them right off to the side. We can go out there. There's 2 or 3 large stumps right over here where the new house is. So, you know,
The large
I'm not
trees-
completely
the
disagreeing. I'm
large
just throwing
trees
up
would
a-
not survive to fill this place over.
Well, they're cut down. I agree. They're
Yeah.
not survived.
You can see, you can actually see the roof base. It's not like, the other, one little thing I do, the signs, I think the report, or one of the reports, they said, it says 75 feet, but I usually, but they're all drawn to be 50 feet. Not a big deal.
So there's no direct restoration of a wetland. In other words, the wetland that exists today with all the fill, that's going to be the extent of the wetland when all this site work is done.
No, when all the site work is done at this 25 foot, the wetland will expand. So currently the wetland is at this line here. If you were to go back there and redelineate the area, the area that he's creating would now be the new wetland boundary. This is going to be a wetland. It's going to be a functioning wetland.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to understand.
Okay. All right. Sorry if I didn't get you there in the first place.
Your June 8th report, you referred to the wetland soils as very poorly drained Hampton and Freetown mucks. Talked about organic profiles, 8 to 16 inches in depth. Will that be reestablished?
Yeah, so essentially, if you look at the plan here, when they excavate out, as Jack talked about, it's gonna go down 3 feet. They're gonna come in, it's gonna be a foot of topsoil, and basically a high organic topsoil, which is gonna function very similar to the foot of organic topsoil that's on the other side of the road. That's the idea, is kind of trying, to the best of your ability, match, what's on the other side, but, that's a forest or wetland that's been there for 100 years, so that's why you planted shrubs and trees and stuff and hope that, over time, come back in 25 years, you're gonna have 25-foot tall trees, you're gonna have your shrub zone that's, matured up, and that's why we're gonna monitor this for 3 years, so that we can provide those sureties that the survivability of those plants are there. If invasives come in and propagate, they have to be dealt with through an invasive species management company. So this will be assessed and reported back to the commission for the next 3 years. So year 1 is the install. So you get basically back a report that says, hey, it's kind of like an as-built, right? We install these 20 trees, we install these 100 shrubs, the signage up, there'll be pictures, all that. And then year 2 is when you do your assessment for that, making that performance standard, getting 60% hydrophytes. So you'd say, hey, listen, I planted 100 shrubs in here year 1. In year 2, when I'm coming back to my thing, how many new shrubs are there? Are there 125 in there? You reassess those. And if any of them are dead in those 3 years, the project's committed to replacing the initial 100 that were installed. So, at the end of the 3 years from now, this will be a better functioning than what it is today. Today it's compacted fill that's basically got a bunch of poplars on it and other like non-desirable vegetation. It's stabilized. It's not necessarily hurting the wetland in any shape or form, but this will increase incrementally the function and values of the wetlands, because the main function and value of this wetland is like, floodwater attenuation, water quality renovation properties, and all of those things are, not being, will benefit from making the area, into this wetland versus, the upland that it is now.
Ian, just a quick question from a staff standpoint, because I'm typically the one that has to deal with this.
Sure.
You just mentioned that after 3 years, if the project isn't successful, okay, you would go back in and reconstruct, right? Or bring it back to where it originally was proposed. What assurance, or what type of assurance do we have as staff that will be done?
Well, the hopes is that after 3 years, it's
Not-
fully,
not-
it's fully functioning. Oh,
Put the hopes aside.
I
If it
guess
doesn't work-
I would defer, what has the town done for other projects in the past that have had mitigation?
We would bond.
You bond for it. So I would defer to, what the town has done for other projects in that case, if that's appropriate. In those instances, I would think they'd be appropriate here.
And also too, do you have a plan of a restoration plan as far as where your boulder is going to go, where the trees are going to go, where?
Yeah, they do. So the boulders are going to go here. The zone, it's 3 zones. So essentially, the trees we say, and then the written plan, they're going to go 20 feet on center along that line. You don't really call out specifically where you're planting the shrubs. You basically plant clumps. So it's, at the discretion of the soil scientists and town staff. We bring the 100 shrubs there. We call Jim up and be like, the material's on site. We'd lay it out, say, is this appropriate? And then they'd be installed. That's kind of
Does it-
I am not comfortable with that.
Well,
I want something on the plan that actually shows, and we
Yeah.
can certainly deviate from that based upon the condition.
I think those things can be shown on a plan.
And also too, the numbers. I mean, you could say you're going to do 100, but if the numbers are on a plan, then we have something that staff.
Well, the
can go-
numbers are on the written plan, which
Right.
accompanies this. So
Right.
it isn't the thing.
But I would like to see personally.
I think those are things that can be put on a plan. Absolutely. I don't think those are any showstoppers.
Yeah, those things can be conditions of approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're going to do, as far as your excavation, the boulders you're going to put on, the trees, where you're going approximately where you're going to put them. I think all that for our benefit and for staff benefit, so they can, and also too, when this is being done, and we'll put it on the plan or whatever, staff can go out there at any time to inspect what
Well,
the work that's being done.
I would imagine that's always the case.
Well, again,
Well, we were refused to go out during the last
Yeah.
application.
yeah, we were told that we could not go out
Of
there.
an active application.
We won't get into that now. We have a,
Well, no, we have to get in there now because that's going to be part of the condition.
well, during the first application, your first third-party reviewer was granted access to the property. I wasn't involved in that application, but
Staff was not allowed to go on the
Right.
property. As the application states, we have the right to.
Right.
Yes.
So that's
I agree with you. You have the right to. It's in regulation. I'm
Right.
with you.
so
That's
you're
part
in
of the
agreement that you would be willing to put on a plan, a drawing of approximately where things are going to go and how they're going to go.
Yeah, I mean, if the project has to put, the dots on the map of where the specific trees are going, that can happen.
Okay.
As you present this restoration plan, I understand that you performed a wetland function and value assessment.
Sure.
I understand it, provided you completed an assessment.
Yep.
And it would be helpful for me if the restoration plan was presented in the context of the function and value assessment so that the commission understands how this restoration plan will restore those functions that have been impaired.
you want to do that now. This was discussed to some degree at the May 6th meeting, Mr. Cole and Mr. Zemba on the record, but did you want to get into that now? The other thing too is that. Sure. The other thing too is that this restoration plan has been revised multiple times, and it's been revised multiple times based on comments received from the commission's third-party reviewer, Land Tech, and the applicant has adopted virtually every single recommendation of Land Tech, and that's the plan that's now before you this evening. And we just received additional comments yesterday from Land Tech, minor in nature, but not surprising that it was a positive review of this restoration plan, given the fact that virtually everything.
Right, and we don't. I mean, we have it here, and they're our agents, so we have to go with it. But also, too, for our benefit, we want to see it on a plan. I think that's our biggest thing. And what Mr. Jackson said, we also want you to tell us what it's going to do as far as the restoration and what it's going to accomplish. Fair enough?
That is fair enough. I think our written plan addresses that to some extent.
I guess it does, but
It very well may, but from experience and 40 years of experience, 9 out of 10 times, the only thing that's on the site is the plan. The written documents aren't there. So that's what the contractor is.
Right.
More than often.
so, yeah, I would like that. Margaret, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I'm good, but I would like a plan too.
I apologize because I wasn't at the last
Right.
meeting, so I think I missed a lot of discussion. I assume you guys were here.
Yeah.
You guys are comfortable that the extent to which this restoration zone extends to the east, that it goes far enough in
Well,
restoring
I think,
what was lost?
I think what we have to is that we hired a,
Land Tech said it's
they,
far enough.
they were
Yeah.
comfortable with what the finding was.
And Rick, the restoration plan essentially undertakes activity and the restoration work within that 50-foot upland review area, particularly with the boulders and the signs, so that area will be protected in advance of someone encroaching into the wetland area.
So the new 50-foot buffer zone will extend from where the eastern border of the restoration plan is going to wind up.
Yeah, like
The new-
that new hatching area, right? That
So
new
that
hatching
50
area
feet
would
from-
become a wetland, right? It would become a regulated
Yep.
wetland because man-made wetlands are regulated the same as naturally occurring ones. And then yeah, your new 50-foot would extend. So generally think it would extend 25 feet to the east, essentially.
So I assume we're going to get into how much of that 50-foot buffer your project is going to encroach? Has that already been?
The project will not encroach into the 50-foot.
Not at all.
The two houses won't go into the 50-foot?
Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think Jim, you are correct. Yeah, because this is showing 50 feet from the 25-foot zone. That's the
And that's where the boulders are.
The boulders are on the
50
50
foot.
foot.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yep, thank you.
Bill, you have anything?
Mr. Chair, again, I don't think Commissioner Jackson's request was responded to. You asked something very specific about the assessment and to walk through how the restoration plan is going to result in.
Well, basically what I asked was, we're receiving information about the extent of removal of material, establishing a new boundary, a new wetland boundary, and plantings and zones, eco zones, and things of that nature. But it would be helpful.
Sure.
What I said was it would be helpful if this information were presented in the context of the functions and values of the wetland.
Let me see if I can try and answer your question on the fly. So essentially, the existing wetland functions and values here, right? You have a forest and wetland corridor that's associated with a water course. So the on-site principal functions is there: groundwater discharge, some local minor flood flow alteration because it's a low gradient, flat area that's very well vegetated. And because it's a very well vegetated area, it has all those, water quality, renovation properties, retention and nutrient uptake, all those things to the plants, right? And then just the general like wildlife attributes that all, forested areas provide. Right now, what's existing is, compacted fill material. And by the project removing that, they're going to match the benefits of the existing wetland by putting in a foot of organic soil, creating an area that expands the floodplain capacity of the area, and planting it with beneficial wildlife native species in replacement of kind of more of the invasive early successional species that exist there now. So the restoration area restores some increased wildlife functionality. It increases the floodplain capacity, so to speak, of that brook because it has more area to expand in, where now it just hits the fill and bounces back off into the wetland. And putting in all these wetland plants will help those natural water quality properties. So the proposal here is this site sheet flows to the west. It's going to go through that nice vegetated buffer where you get all the emergence right here, right? They're going to filter out all the sediments and whatnot. Then you have the structure of the shrubs, and then you have the trees for shading the stream. So, you know, in my opinion, that's how the functionality will match what's existing and help you a net benefit to it over existing conditions of leaving it as is. Did I kind of get to the core of your question?
Right, but I have another question. So one function that the commission is aware of is the flood flow alteration, because we know from the testimony from the neighbors that that has been impaired. And my question to you is, I didn't see on your restoration plan, do you have elevations? Are you establishing a floodplain with specific elevations of mineral soil, or organic soil, and then the necessary?
Yes, Jack went out there and took extra elevations because we had to know how far down they were gonna have to dig, right? So when I went out there to the site, I generally said, you know, you can eyeball it and you can say like, I'm generally 3 feet above where the naturally occurring wetland is, right? If you walk to the edge of the property where you have wetland soils, if you walk backwards, you'll wind up basically being about 3 feet, you know, taller than what the wetland is. But that's just eyeballing it, and that's not good enough. So
Right.
Jack went out there and took topographic shots all along the area, and he developed a little profile, and that's what he was talking about. They were going to back cut it in so that, you know, it matched the elevations of what's existing. So basically, when they excavate it out, right, and then they build it back up, that 1 foot of organic topsoil will be at the same elevation of the naturally occurring wetland that's right next door as the reference.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but does that detail exist? Is there a cross section that shows those details?
Right, it's right here. So here's the cross section. It shows you look in the upper left-hand corner of sheet 3 of 4. There's a profile average section, and it shows the brook, and then it shows basically that 5-foot berm that I was talking about that I wanted to leave. So the stream bank, you know, you don't want that stream bank taking away the side of the stream bank in this restoration plan. You want the stream to stay where it is. And then it's all trees on that stream bank too. So I don't want to disrupt it. So leave that and then back cut it, fill so that you match the hydrology. That's basically what you're doing. You're basically taking out the material to match the hydrology, and you're bringing in a foot of topsoil so you get organics.
And that stream bank that you described, having not been on the site, the stream bank that you described, that is a naturally occurring soil that's vegetated, or is that a fill material that's vegetated?
It's naturally occurring that's vegetated.
So it's alluvial in nature.
It's organics on top, like alluvial stuff. The alluvial stuff's in the stream channel proper, which is only like 1 foot or 2 wide, and then it goes right in organics. So like if you were looking at the stream profile, right, like it's like a sandy, cobbly, like 1 foot wide channel itself, and then it goes up 1 foot, and that up 1 foot is all organics, and then that's vegetated with basically a carpet of skunk cabbage.
Right. So based on that hatched area on the plan, you're not taking away any of the
naturally occurring material. Yes.
Right. You're just taking away
the
fill.
That's the intent. The intent is to not touch the existing wetland area proper, and even leaving a small little buffer so that it's definitely not encroached. And that just adds to like the stability of like E&S control and constructability, right? Because you don't want any muddy water leaving the site when you're doing this.
When you say leaving a small buffer, what do you mean?
When I say small buffer, that 5-foot berm that I was talking about between
Undisturbed area.
undisturbed area. So you have you can see it on this side. So see the brook right here?
Yes.
So when Jack went back out there, I said, I think part of the conversation that's missing here is the fact that this brook is not shown on any of these maps. It just shows the wetland boundary. I said everybody needs to have an understanding that there's a brook there also, because the brook's close to this side that they're building on. I didn't want them intercepting the brook and then changing the flow dynamics. That would be far worse. And that I think would be at risk if you went all the way to like the edge of the property. So I said, keep the brook there, because it's all, you go there and it makes sense, right? There's trees, it's vegetated. You're like, I don't want to, like, why would I destabilize the area and be counterproductive? So that's why we were leaving that. That's why it's shown on the brook there. And
Thank you.
Was there any special work necessary at the, you know, where it borders the abutting properties with regard to this profile of elevations? Does it blend in?
yeah, the intent, if you were to go to the property, have you been to the property?
It's been a while.
It's been a while. So, you know, essentially it's going to be kind of like the back, like right corner, like 3/4 of the property there, because the wetlands veer off. Like if on the left-hand side, the wetlands veer off off to the side, kind of off to the property. So that side's not really touched any.
But then you work all the way up to the northern.
Yeah, we're going up to the boundary there, but that's tucked behind this house. It's all vegetated. There's a big, not big, there's like a 5-foot elevation change, I'm gonna say, if memory serves me right, between like the fenced yard of this house. It's all forested back there. So in my opinion, they're buffered from this activity, you know.
Anything else? Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments or questions?
For the record, my name is Raymond Zisa. I live at 374 Chamberlain Highway. My wife and I, Erica, own the property just to the north, northern boundary. So we're neighbors. We've been there since 1998. So we're very familiar with this property next to us. We've been neighbors to them for a long time. I have two concerns about this. First concern is the proposed boundary for the new wetlands is considerably less than what it was originally. One reason I know that is because, again, being a neighbor, I saw where the wetlands were, where the vegetation was, all the trees, and all that was taken down and filled at the same time. So I know kind of where it was. And the biggest problem with that is being to the north of that property, we now flood considerably. Only in heavy rains, but it's a big deal. Even to the point where my basement flooded, which it never did before. So that's our major concern, is the amount of water that got displaced onto our property because of the flow and just disrupted. So now we have a new wetlands proposed. I'm not a soil scientist, I'm not a hydrologist or anything, but I'm hoping